Chapter 769. There are no special requirements for learning armament hockey, but the physical requirements are extremely strict. A thin woman like Robin has a small chance of learning it. And Robin focuses on archaeological work. She shouldn't have extra time to improve her strength, let alone learn armament hockey. According to Robin's skillful skills, she should have learned it in more than 1 or 2 years. Boom! Akiji, who was caught off guard, was blown away. The fist that looked weak was filled with explosive power, forcing Akiji to retreat again and again, leaving a long and narrow ditch on the ground. The two sides were 10 or 20 meters apart. It's incredible. It was just my personal speculation before, but now it seems that my fantasy is true. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Akiji frowned. The power of this punch was enough to threaten him, and this may not be Robin's full strength. Your captain, pointing to Luffy, who was frozen into an ice sculpture, Akiji said, these people don't know hockey, but you are an exception. My previous speculation has become a fact. You can learn armament hockey. Obviously, someone taught you, and your strength is not bad. Maybe it was a high-level Marine who taught you. Armament hockey has no age limit. If you want to explore it by yourself, it will take at least 5 or 6 years or even longer. Robin's progress is so fast that someone must be teaching her. I have no right to tell you this. Robin kept her mouth shut. The only person who taught her hockey was dustless. You are obviously the strongest among these guys. But you are willing to be an ordinary crew member. It seems that you have a hidden purpose. Akiji began to think about Robin's purpose. All of this is too abnormal. It can't be a coincidence. First of all, it is very unusual for her to use armament hockey. Second, the undercover Straw Hat Pirates are even more confusing. Who taught you hockey? Not only armament hockey, but also Kenbenshoku hockey. Akiji, who was thinking hard, changed the topic. Just now, Robin suddenly discovered his existence. It was not a simple coincidence. It was obviously Kenbenshoku hockey. I have said, no comment. Robin's tone was cold, completely different from her previous gentle self. After taking off her disguise, she was unapproachable. I know that the person who taught me how to be domineering won't do you any good. After understanding him, you'll only feel more despair. You know I never joke. I haven't seen you for a few years, but your eloquence has improved by leaps and bounds. You're completely different from the little girl who used to be submissive, Akiji said in a deep voice. His tone was obviously regretful. If he could have killed Robin or brought her directly back to the Marine headquarters, none of this would have happened today. However, staring at Robin's black fist, Akiji said disapprovingly, it's impossible for you to defeat me with your strength. No, you might not even have the strength to protect yourself. Chinji said with a cold look in his eyes. The surrounding islands were deserted. It was an endless plain. There were almost no obstacles to avoid, and the nearby sea was frozen by Akiji. The chance of escaping was 0. With a light shake of his arms, the surrounding cold air madly condensed, and a large ice bird rapidly took shape. Ice block, stormy pheasant beak. The moment Akiji's voice fell, the ice bird took shape in an instant. It was full of vitality, and it shook its 2 wings vigorously. Yum! The giant ice bird let out a clear cry and flew straight into the blue sky. After circling for a while, its sharp eyes examined Robin, as if it was searching for her weakness. Then, with a whoosh, the giant ice bird swooped down. How can this fragile ice dregs work? Fearlessly staring at the falling ice bird, Robin's beautiful eyes burned with a burning desire to fight. The big bird opened its sharp mouth and was about to swallow Robin, but she easily dodged it. Then, her fist rose from the ground and hit the ice bird. Kakaka, numerous cracks appeared on the frozen body. At first, the cracks were only the size of a thin line, which was negligible. But because of the characteristics of ice, after only 3 seconds, it extended without limit and finally burst. "It's only so." With a smile on her face, Robin nodded with satisfaction. "Sure enough, you're only suitable for the job." A tall black figure suddenly covered the sky, and a body of nearly 3 meters looked down at Robin. Akiji held a sharp weapon in both hands. In less than a breath, he approached Robin. "Don't you understand? That's just a bait to attract your attention. The person in charge of the main attack is me." The ice spear in Akiji's hand was released and went straight to Robin. Bansho Tenshin. An irresistible gravitational force came from behind, and Robin was caught off guard and was immediately sucked in, and the ice spear followed. "This is..." Akiji frowned and swept in the direction of the gravitational force, and the expressionless Uchiha Madara suddenly came into his sight. "It's you." His face that always maintained indifference and confidence was stiff, as if his soul was taken away. Akiji was sluggish for a few seconds before recovering his mind. Uchiha Madara was still vivid in his mind. Occasionally, he would have nightmares, in which the protagonist was this annoying bastard. The ice spear swept through the cold mist and slowly melted. Akiji looked straight at Madara. He knew that it was meaningless to fight in front of the man in front of him. When he joined forces with Kizaru, he was embarrassed. Challenging him alone was just asking for humiliation. Chapter 770. Seeing the appearance of Uchiha Madara, Akiji calmed down. He knew that resistance in front of Madara was futile. Akiji didn't feel any murderous intent from Madara. It was unwise to take the initiative to fight, as there was a huge difference in strength between them. Madara's emotionless eyes looked down at him indifferently. There was nothing in the world worth looking at. This man is really arrogant and overbearing. Akiji's clenched fists loosened, and his face was dignified. Once, the Marine headquarters held a special meeting about Uchiha Madara and used a lot of power to investigate his origins. However, the results made the Marine headquarters higher up stare at each other. This guy seemed to have appeared out of thin air. They couldn't find any information about him, and his origins were completely blank. If it wasn't for Uchiha Madara, they wouldn't have figured out what his name was. "Long time no see, I didn't expect to meet you on such a desolate island, what a coincidence." A ruthless voice came out of Uchiha Madara's mouth. Combined with the black iron sticks inserted in his body, he was no different from a cold-blooded robot. Coincidence? Even Akiji, who was as calm as a stone, had a slight twitch on his face. Even a 3-year-old child would know that this was a lie. They had coincidentally met on this desolate island, and then coincidentally met Robin's coincidental attack. This was nonsense. Although I don't know what the relationship between the two of them is. It seems that the person who helped Nico Robin jump out of the Marine's encirclement last time is most likely this guy, and he has the ability to do it. Akiji affirmed, all kinds of coincidences combined together, everything became true. This woman. I will protect her. Staring at Akiji's expression, even if it was hidden very cleverly, Uchiha Madara controlled by Dustless could see it clearly. Once he joined forces with Kizaru and was defeated, it was normal to have a shadow in his heart. Hearing this, Akiji's old face changed color, mixed with embarrassment. Nico Robin is an important prisoner of the world government. The Gorosei personally ordered to arrest her. You don't have to get involved in this mess for her. Akiji reminded him out of good intentions. The threat and warning in his tone were also very clear. No matter what means he used, Akiji was also forced to helplessly. The Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, repeatedly urged him to find Nico Robin. Now that the cooked duck is about to disappear again, how can he be reconciled? However, the enemy in front of him was extraordinary, and it was useless to make a move. Akiji could only use this plan to suppress Uchiha Madara with the terrifying reputation of the Gorosei, hoping that he would wisely give up and wisely return Robin. 5 Elder Stars. Unless they come in person, you can't take her away. Pointing at Nico Robin expressionlessly, Uchiha Madara's cold voice was unquestionable. Is there no room for retreat? Akiji was helpless and disappointed. This was also within his expectations. Wanting to deceive Robin with just a few words of threat was a daydream. Dustless was also a figure who had lived for more than half a century. How could he be scared by Akiji? Taking a deep look at Nico Robin, Akiji rode the bicycle again and slipped away. Every minute he spent with Uchiha Madara made him feel suffocated. Master, is it really okay to let Akiji go like this? Nico Robin asked anxiously, looking at the indifferent Uchiha Madara. Dustless, who was far away in Mariewa, just smiled lightly. Uchiha Madara said, "Do you want to kill him?" This is not the case. Asked by Dustless, Nico Robin was speechless. The impact of killing Akiji on the world was self-evident. I'm afraid that the Straw Hat Pirates will be hunted down by the Marine in the future. Killing Akiji is not good for the time being, but it will cause countless troubles. Robin won't be able to safely interpret the poneglyph in the future, and Dustless won't get what he wants. It's completely tantamount to lifting a stone to his own feet. The loss outweighs the gain. Akiji should be restrained in the future. At least he won't embarrass you by himself. Uchiha Madara's tone was very positive, and at the same time, he looked at the frozen Straw Hat Pirates and couldn't help but feel sad and sympathetic for this group of guys. As for killing Akiji, there is no need to kill him now. Living people are more valuable. It's only been about 2 months at sea, but he met Marine Admiral twice, and both times, the result was the same. He was overwhelmed and crushed, and the grievances in his heart can be imagined. Akiji left in disgrace. Naturally, he had to report the reason for the failure of the mission to Sengoku. After hearing the details, Sengoku didn't care about Akiji's defeat. It's not that the Marine is too incompetent, but the enemy is too strong. It's better to let that guy join the Shichibukai. Sengoku secretly decided in his heart. Akiji has been observing Sengoku, and his eyes seem to see through his thoughts. It's impossible. That guy is absolutely not interested in the Shichibukai. Akiji extinguished Sengoku's dream. The Shichibukai is like a delicious cake, but there are many people who are disdainful. For example, a powerful pirate like Uchiha Madara, a mere Shichibukai, is meaningless. Chapter 771. Akiji extinguished Sengoku's dream. Shichibukai is like a delicious cake, but there are many people who are disdainful. For example, Uchiha Madara is a powerful pirate. It doesn't make sense for a Shichibukai to tempt him. Maybe he will be humiliated. This is a bad year. The more powerful the enemy is, the more likely it is to be the enemy of justice. Roger, including Whitebeard, who is powerful enough to shake the world, are the enemies of the Marine. Sengoku said with a tone full of strong unwillingness. Sengoku's low roar contained a struggle. With a bang, he slammed his hands on the desk to vent all kinds of negative emotions in his heart. It seems that only by doing this can Sengoku's devastated heart feel better. G.O.D. enemies always seem to be on the opposite side of the Marine. Nico Robin is very important. We can't turn a blind eye to it. When it comes to the bottom line, the Marine must not back down. Sengoku's face glowed with dazzling brilliance, and he said decisively. We really shouldn't back down. Akiji also nodded and agreed with Sengoku's idea. It's not that the Marine is stingy. If Nico Robin is really a pawn, the Marine will let it go, but she is the only person in the world who has solved the poneglyph. The most fatal thing is that it also contains the whereabouts of ancient weapons. Sengoku certainly can't be indifferent. I have ordered the CP9 lurking in Water 7 to wait for the right opportunity to capture Nico Robin. Akiji's tone was full of determination. And I have given the golden Den Mushi to Spandam. Once something unexpected happens, it will immediately launch the Demon Slayer order. Contrary to the middle-aged uncle who always had a warm smile on his face, at this moment, Akiji has a new style of his admiral. Sengoku raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Akiji in surprise. He obviously read the meaning of caution in Akiji's eyes. Nico Robin is just a little girl with no strength. The original bounty of 81 million berries is not worthy of the name. When Nico Robin was less than 10 years old, the bounty of 81 million berries was not because of her strength, but because of her particularity. After all, she was the only human in the world who could decipher the poneglyph. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Fleet Admiral. I have to remind you that was before. Hearing this, Akiji suddenly smiled and subconsciously touched his slightly red and swollen left face. He could still feel a tingling pain left by Nico Robin. Nico Robin is not what she used to be. The CP9 is her opponent. I hope they will not be annihilated. Bye. Hearing Akiji's complicated sigh, Sengoku was slightly stunned. He immediately stared at the red and swollen face of Akiji and understood what he meant. On an unknown island, Uchiha Madara had already left, leaving only Nico Robin here. Her next job was to wait for these ice sculptures to melt. Of him. He was. But compared, to suddenly appeared. Ants to him. Was to be. Is. Ice to. He. To be. Of, to. And to, s. Toot. Robin looked at the Straw Hat Pirates. To some extent, they were too ignorant. They didn't even know the strength of an admiral. The Straw Hat Pirates want to shake the admiral with their current strength. They're overestimating themselves. That's a scene where the Straw Hat Pirates are overestimating themselves. As time passed, the cloudless Mary Geos gradually dimmed, and the fiery red sunset hung in the distant sky. It was beautiful, and under the gorgeous halo, the whole Mary Geos was peaceful and quiet. Even the Tenryubito, who liked to torture and kill slaves, gave face to Dushless. Seeing the appearance of Dushless, they all hid at home and slept. This group of guys is really timid. Yuki, who was sitting on Dustless's broad left shoulder, said with deep disdain and contempt in her words. Incompetent idiots, only know how to bully slaves. Dustless and his family walked peacefully. As the sun gradually set, three figures stretched infinitely. Looking at them, the charming woman leaning on Dustless's right shoulder was Kagaya. After not seeing little Yushi for a while, Huiji also missed her. However, this little girl was playful and stayed by Wu Chen's side, refusing to return to the system world. Wu Chen had no choice but to bring Huiji out of the system world. What a sin. Dustless sighed. This little girl was the natural enemy of the Tenryubito. She often suppressed and bullied the Tenryubito. Because of the powerful existence of Dustless, the Tenryubito could only swallow their anger. It's a waste of your talent if I don't offend them. It's because of this young lady's recklessness that you can better reflect your strength and deterrence. Yushi glared discontentedly at Wu Chen and said confidently. Yuki, come here. Kagaya's charming eyes were like silk, and the beating light was gentle like water. Yuki fell into Kagaya's arms obediently and rubbed comfortably like a kitten. It's much more comfortable than smelly father. Yuki enjoyed it and arched her head, squinting her crescent moon, and her face was intoxicated. Dustless's mouth twitched fiercely, and he looked at Kagaya with hopeful eyes. He expected her to teach Yuki a lesson, but her words directly made Dustless vomit blood. What you said just now is right. A mere tenryubito is insignificant. Do what you should do, don't worry about them. Chapter 772. Dustless's old face turned green. He originally hoped that Huiji would teach this little girl a lesson, but now it seemed that it was unrealistic. Especially Huiji's actions, it was obvious that she was instigating little Yueshi to find trouble with the celestial dragons. Forget it, let's just go with the flow. The helplessness hanging on his face disappeared with the wind. Just like what Huiji said, a mere celestial dragons didn't need to care. Holding Huiji's soft waist, Dustless leisurely strolled. The elegant body fragrance full of endless charm hid his face. Dustless's expression flashed a strange color, and his hands became restless. Huiji stared at Dustless angrily. This guy was so bold in broad daylight. She intended to stop Dustless's action. Thinking of little Yueshi in her arms, her face turned red, and a trace of anger flashed in her eyes. This despicable guy is looting a burning house, shameless. Huiji scolded secretly. She also ignored the big hands that were pinching and touching inside her lapel. Glancing at Huiji from the corner of his eyes, Dustless's face was as usual, and he directly ignored her. His pair of extremely skilled hands were unscrupulous. How has Yueshi been recently? Her delicate thin lips fell on Yueshi's face, pointing to Dustless with a wretched smile, and said softly, "Your father shouldn't have bullied you. If he bullied you, you must remember to tell mother." Little Yueshi nodded her head like a chicken pecking rice, and immediately her deep shining eyes looked at Dustless playfully. She seemed to be thinking about how to arrange Dustless's story. "I warn you, don't talk nonsense." Dustless's mouth twitched fiercely, and he said with a straight face. Little Yueshi smiled maliciously. Her slender fingers touched her white and tender chin, and she looked like she was thinking about how to frame Dustless. When Dustless saw this, his old face darkened and he glared at Yueshi. "If you dare to talk nonsense, I'll tear your mouth off." Yueshi just made a face and looked at Dustless with disdain. This kind of senseless threat, he usually didn't use it. "You're like a child who can't be found. In any case, you've lived for more than half a century, yet you're still so childish." Poochie. With a beautiful smile on her face, Huiji scratched Yushi's nose and carefully looked at Dustless, who was about to go berserk. This was the first time she saw him so helpless. That helpless expression of wanting to beat him up was especially interesting in Hui's eyes. Since the moment he had met Dustless, it had been almost 14 or 15 years. This was the first time he had met Dustless with such an expression. A gust of cold wind swept over. Dustless looked up at the gradually darkening night and whispered, "It's time to take off. It seems that it's getting late. It's time to go back." Chapter 773. Dazed, Hui looked at Dustless in astonishment. She didn't expect this guy to be so shameless and cunning, deliberately luring her into a trap and letting Dustless take advantage of the loophole. "It's okay to stick to the rules, but you have to serve me well tonight. This is your responsibility," Dustless said with a cheeky smile close to Hui's ear. With a wretched smile and a wolfish light, Dustless has long been hungry. Without Yueshi, this third wheel, he would have already done Hui on the spot. The sky as the cover and the earth as the bed, this is the best. Hui snorted and simply chose to ignore the existence of Dustless. She elegantly ate the dishes as if nothing had happened. The blush on her perfect face couldn't be wiped away. Late at night, the bright moon hung high, and everything was quiet. Dustless sneaked into Hui's room. He thought he could indulge himself, but he didn't expect little Yueshi to guard Hui like a knight, causing Dustless to feel stifled. The next morning, Dustless's eyes were dark, no different from a drug addict for many years. "Father's physique is stronger than mother, why do you look so listless?" Yushi's clear eyes narrowed into crescents as she asked curiously. Hearing this, Huey smiled. Her smile was as gentle as a spring breeze. Wiping Yushi's face with a wet towel, she revealed a faint smile. Although these trivial matters can be done by using servants, Huey, who loves Yushi too much, still chose to do it herself. Is father not feeling well, mother? Looking at Huey in puzzlement, Yushi felt that Huey's smile had a different meaning. Don't worry about him, he's just distressed. I'm afraid he was suffocated last night. Patting Yushi's head, Huey said with a smile. She was afraid that Dustless couldn't hear her, so she deliberately stretched her voice and looked very proud. So that's how it is. In order to guard against me, she deliberately pulled Yushi to sleep with her yesterday. The confusion in his eyes disappeared. Dustless instantly understood Huey's meaning. Okay, let's go eat breakfast. Her thin lips gently kissed Yushi's face. Huey's smile was beautiful. For this daughter of hers, she liked no one could let Yushi be wronged. Therefore, Yushi's arrogance increased. She was the only one in everything, exceptionally overbearing. Little Yushi nodded her head, then skipped happily and disappeared into the dark corridor. I didn't expect you to be so despicable. As if he couldn't stand the glare, Dustless closed the curtains, turned, and said to Huey, people like me, I hate to lose, there's no such an annoying word in the dictionary. Hearing this, Huey pursed her lips and smiled, her eyes filled with indescribable disdain. You're really stubborn. Unfortunately, you've already lost. This is an undeniable fact. No, you're wrong. Last night was only a temporary victory. There is still the second half of the finals. Chapter 774. Three figures walked in the dark space, of which the figure on the left was the most conspicuous, wearing a white cloak and a beige striped coat, and his tall body was nearly 3 meters tall. Sengoku is really impatient. He has been fighting with Whitebeard all his life. He is an old friend. It's really cold to want Whitebeard's life so much. In the dark space, Dustless's voice came. Looking around, Dustless, Kizaru, and Akiji were all there. Today, Fire Fist Ace's wounds have healed, but his spirit is abnormally sluggish and decadent, and his temperament is terminally ill, like an old man in his twilight years. There is no other way. Whitebeard's blood must end the last era. They have become a thing of the past. Kizaru leisurely blew smoke rings and stared at Ace, who was locked by Seastone in front of him. His old eyes flashed with pity as the entire Whitebeard pirates may die because of him. It's surprisingly low. Several people walked to the side of the prison cell, and Akiji looked down at Ace sitting on the ground. At this moment, his head drooped and he was listless. His inner soul was deprived and he was just a walking corpse. If you knew this, why did you do it? Unfortunately, there is no regret medicine in this world, and it's useless to change. The remaining sympathy in his eyes turned into indifference, and Akiji opened the door of the cell himself. Dustless and others walked in front of Ace and looked at him with different expressions. His feelings are pitiful, but his crimes are unforgivable. 3 admirals came at once. I didn't expect a prisoner like me to be so valuable. Looking up and looking at the indifferent expressions of Dustless and others, Fire Fist Ace laughed at himself. Don't get me wrong, I'm just accompanying them to release you from prison. Of course, I'm not letting you go free, but escorting you to a more airtight place. Impel down, Dustless said. Kizaru stepped forward, pinched out the cigarette in his hand, put his hands in his trouser pockets, and said in a lazy tone, Don't look down on yourself so much. You are an important person in the Whitebeard pirates. Mariewa is not far from Impel Down. The possibility of Whitebeard ambushing you halfway is very high. Hearing this, Fire Fist Ace's expression became more gloomy, but Kizaru didn't care and continued, So, Fleet Admiral sent me in Kazan. After all, the opponent is the Whitebeard pirates. They are all terrible hunters. If we are careless, we may capsize. But then Kizaru's tone suddenly changed, and his face that was as rough as dead bark sneered. Often the position of the hunter and the prey changes rapidly, and the hunter suddenly becomes the prey from time to time. You plan to imprison me and impel down. Hearing that he was going to be locked and impelled down, Ace's lifeless eyes glowed with a strong light, and his face was filled with unconcealable joy. Don't get me wrong, Wu Qin said. His expression was frozen, exactly like a dead person. I transferred you to impel down in the hope that you can have a better environment. At the very least, I want you to be white and plump, so that you won't look like a human or a ghost like this. Ruthlessly stepping Fire Fist Ace into the 18th layer of hell, Dustless's mouth squirmed, and there was no sign of peace. He continued to indifferently attack. You must be alive and kicking. A stinky fish that is about to die of disease can't attract the ferocious Sea King. It seems that we still have to execute him together. Fire Fist Ace's face was ashen when he heard this, and his eyes suddenly turned black. He felt that his future was dark and desperate, and the whole world had ruthlessly abandoned him. Marine's plan to publicly execute him has not changed, and they still intend to use him to attract the Whitebeard pirates. This is natural, you are such a perfect bait, Sengoku will certainly not let you go in vain. Pirate King Roger's son, Whitebeard's adopted son, it's a pity not to use you. Dustless said. Ace's face changed greatly, and a blood-red light appeared in his eyes, like a cat whose tail was stepped on. He roared like crazy, my father has only one person from beginning to end, Whitebeard. Ignorant, it is because you are Whitebeard's son that we use you at all costs. Kizaru sneered. Snap. Dustless suddenly snapped his fingers, and several black-clothed men came out from behind him, holding a rich dinner in their hands, and the fragrance made people's mouths twitch. Compared to Sengoku, I am a lot kinder. I have prepared a last dinner for you. In a dark place like Impel Down, it is impossible to get this kind of treatment. Dustless said with a generous face. However, Fire Fist Ace was just full of disdain and did not appreciate it. Last dinner. I feel like this is hush money. Fire Fist Ace suddenly said in a baffling manner. His entire face was filled with a sneer. Hush money. Kizaru and Akiji looked at each other and looked at Fire Fist Ace with a puzzled expression. They didn't know what he meant by those words. The last dinner is obviously just to shut me up, afraid that I will retaliate against you after I go to heaven. Dustless looked at Fire Fist Ace contemptuously, and his words were full of ridicule. You sinful people can't go to heaven, you can only go to hell, and you can't become an angel, you can only become a ghost. Looking down at Fire Fist Ace, Dustless's eyes were full of contempt. If you think you can go to heaven and retaliate against me by becoming a ghost, you can try, I should be looking forward to it. Chapter 775. Dustless looked at Ace with a funny look. This guy even wants to go to heaven. Especially listening to his tone, it seems that even in the world after death, he won't easily bypass the marine. How naive are you, Fire Fist? Kizaru's lazy voice sounded. He always felt that Kizaru was mentally abnormal. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to say such crazy words. The Whitebeard pirates are all sinful people. The stronger they are, the more blood debt they bear. If such a person can go to heaven, Kizaru feels that he can be an angel. Untie him. Akiji ordered silently. Fire Fist Ace was tied up with thick chains that were even thicker than a human's leg. Are you guys trying to use me to lure Dad? Ace said in despair, his eyes ashen. You've asked this question before. Frowning, Dustless always felt that Fire Fist Ace's words had a different meaning, but since you asked, seeing that you are about to step into the underworld, this is indeed a trap to attract the Whitebeard pirate. No, it's not just to attract Whitebeard. At this moment, Dustless's voice spread out, brushing every inch of the dark space. This public execution of the people who participated in saving you, I'm afraid that they will be affected. Dustless said with a cold smile. Ah. He wanted to see Ace's firm will to be defeated. Akiji looked at the two helplessly. The abilities of the devil fruit are not only surprisingly similar, but sometimes in terms of character, they also like to attack others. This is your last dinner, enjoy it. Akiji's heart was as calm as water as he looked down at Fire Fist Ace. Although his experience was worthy of sympathy, he couldn't absolve Fire Fist Ace of his guilt. In the eyes of the Marine, pirates are not worthy of sympathy. Dustless's assistant placed the steaming hot plate in front of Fire Fist Ace and then silently retreated. Open his sea stone handcuffs. Staring at Fire Fist Ace with sea stone in his hands, Akiji ordered. Akiji didn't care about this. Dustless, Kizaru, and him were three admirals. Fire Fist Ace couldn't escape. If he wanted to resist, he would be cruelly suppressed. It wouldn't have any effect. Instead, it would increase unnecessary injuries. Dustless and Kizaru both remained silent, as if nothing had happened. Fire Fist Ace was not worthy of their attention. Crack! The heavy sea stone handcuffs fell to the ground in the corner. Fire Fist Ace stood up and moved his stiff body. He stared at the knife beside the plate, and a strange luster flashed in his eyes. If you want to escape, forget it. You can't deal with three admirals at the same time. Dustless said as he keenly captured the luster in Ace's eyes. Come with us, I hope we don't have to do it ourselves. Kizaru said. At least wait until I eat something to replenish my strength. If I'm hungry, you Marines will be in trouble. Fire Fist Ace revealed a bold and carefree smile. Then, he began to wolf down the fragrant feast with both hands. Like a reincarnated hungry ghost, he finished the dazzling array of food in one gulp in a short period of time. Bring it to me. At this moment, a loud roar resounded through the darkness. Then he rushed to the side of the previous assistant and easily dodged the knife in the other's hand. Immediately, he flashed back for a distance, guarding against Dustless and others. I knew this would happen. It's impossible to make this kid give up. Kizaru sighed and looked as usual. He wasn't surprised. On the contrary, all this was expected. Kizaru didn't expect Fire Fist Ace to go to impel down with them. Are you going to use this broken blade to deal with us? Dustless leaned back against the iron fence. The long knife in Ace's hand was easy to deal with ordinary humans, but against a Marine admiral, it would be broken in an instant. You're wrong. Don't say three, I'm not your opponent at present. Fire Fist Ace shook his head resolutely. Dustless and others, each of them is strong beyond the scope of human knowledge. It is impossible for him to defeat an admiral with his current strength. Is it? Staring thoughtfully at the knife in Fire Fist Ace's hand, Dustless and others looked at each other and understood his intentions. He didn't choose to fight, but another kind of relief. Kill yourself to thank them. Only with Fire Fist Ace's death would Whitebeard be able to realize that everything would be salvaged. Why do you always have this ridiculous fantasy? It only makes you more powerless, Ace. Do you think suicide can solve everything? Dream on. Dustless sneered. Akiji and Kizaru frowned. Although they were very close to Fire Fist Ace, they were half a beat late. This kid may really succeed in committing suicide. Don't forget, your life and death have nothing to do with me when you get out of here, but now you are still in Mariewa. If I let you die, you can die. If I let you live, you must live. As a prisoner, you have no choice. Chapter 776. Don't forget, your life and death has nothing to do with me when you get out of here, but now you are still in Mariewa. If I let you die, you can die. If I let you live, you must live. You have no choice as a prisoner. The sonorous and powerful voice fell into everyone's ears. Akiji and Kizaru were stunned, their eyes were a little dazed, and their eyebrows were slightly raised, and their eyes were full of disapproval and doubt. Such a short distance is not enough to stop Fire Fist Ace. If he is determined to commit suicide, Akiji and Kizaru can only stand and watch. Even with Kizaru's speed, he can't do it. He can arrive in front of Fire Fist Ace in an instant, but he can't stop him. Do you really think I don't dare? Fire Fist Ace's eyes flashed with anger. It is the nature of pirates to be straightforward. They will never hide their feelings. Therefore, most pirates are reckless. Although Fire Fist Ace has some wisdom, his pirate nature has never changed, and it has been deeply ingrained in his bones. You little brat. Your brain doesn't seem to work well, your reaction is unexpectedly slow. Dustless still stood on the ground, his eyes always remained calm, and his temperament was elegant and calm. I told you before that this is Mariewa. I don't mind if you die, but without my approval, if you die, where will I put my face? You can die, but you must leave Mariewa, for example, die on their ship. Dustless pointed to Akiji and Kizaru, with an expression that had nothing to do with him, and said softly, in short, I don't care where you die, but I promised Sengoku that I would never let you die in Mariewa. Hearing this, Akiji and Kizaru looked at each other and could catch the speechlessness in each other's eyes. What does he mean by dying on our ship? This is too irresponsible. Stupid. Dustless's eyes were full of pity. He said contemptuously, even if you really die here now, the government will not let Whitebeard go casually. This is not an accident, but an inevitability caused by various reasons. Don't be naive. Marine's battle power has expanded at an unprecedented rate, while the Whitebeard pirates are slowly weakening, and because of Whitebeard's problem, the entire pirates are at a dead end. At present, there is no one in the Whitebeard pirates who can replace the former Whitebeard. Attacking the Whitebeard pirates is something that cannot be changed. Shut up, you bastard. Musket. Flames shot out from his fingers, like bullets fired from a machine gun. They engulfed Dustless in an instant, but did not harm his body. The current Fire Fist Ace was abnormally strong in the eyes of the world, but in front of Dustless, this cheat, he was abnormally weak. Without even looking at Fire Fist Ace, Dustless's body simply glowed, and he easily dodged the incoming bullets. Elemental transformation was completely immune to these ordinary physical attacks. Are you angry? Yes, the Whitebeard pirates are about to die, and I can only watch. No, it may even be the fuse that destroys the Whitebeard pirates. If it was me, I would hate myself for being incompetent. Dustless said with a look of understanding. Goodbye, Oyaji. Looking at the sharp tachi in his hand, Ace's face flashed a decisive color, and he cut straight towards his neck. It looked like he wanted to separate his own body. His method was extremely bloody and violent. He was extremely bloodthirsty to the enemy, and even more ruthless to himself. He thought that he could completely disappear from life and death, but a sudden change occurred. Idiot, I said that you can only die if I want you to. His pupils twisted rapidly, sending out amazing eye power fluctuations. Dustless disappeared for a while. In the dark space, his whole person disappeared out of thin air, as if he had never appeared, and peace was restored again. Fire Fist Ace suddenly opened his eyes and shot a strange light. Just now, it seemed that there was an inexplicable distortion that swallowed the tachi in his hand. Impossible. It's really gone. Looking at his empty right arm, Fire Fist Ace's face was filled with shock. A figure still descended from the sky. His dark black hair was messy, and his eyes had remained cold and indifferent from the beginning. There was no doubt that it was Dustless. Boom. Caw caw caw. Dustless's calf that contained a powerful force was close to Ace's right shoulder, and the unexpected huge force made Ace's expression change greatly. He wanted to struggle to avoid, but he was suppressed by the iron blood, and was easily stepped into the ground by Dustless. The ground couldn't withstand this powerful force and burst open. "Are you awake now, Fire Fist?" Dustless looked down at the sluggish Fire Fist Ace and asked, as if he had done something insignificant. His voice was light and full of magnetism. A small character like Fire Fist Ace was not worthy of being surprised. "How did you get here?" Fire Fist Ace roared in disbelief. Putting aside the fact that the tachi in his hand had disappeared, Dustless had also inexplicably descended from the sky and easily subdued Fire Fist Ace, who was completely unaware of it. "This is called space ninjutsu." Dustless glanced at Fire Fist Ace and said bluntly, "The name of this jutsu is Heavenly Hand Force. Within a certain distance, you can change your position with an object. Just now, I swapped the tachi in your hand." Pointing at the tachi in Fire Fist Ace's hand, it appeared where Dustless was standing just now. Chapter 777. The strangeness of ninjutsu is beyond imagination, including all things. Fire Fist Ace, including Kizaru and Akiji, looked at Dustless, who suddenly appeared with a stunned face. Coming and going without a trace, it is impossible to detect. The so-called observation haki does not work at all. "I just used observation haki, but I didn't realize his existence." Akiji frowned slightly. After Dustless's body disappeared, he began to use observation haki to perceive the movements around him, but Dustless was like a ghost without a body, completely shielding the perception of observation haki. "Space ninjutsu." Kizaru heard the words and immediately guessed the meaning of the words. Maybe it's the ability to move through space, and only in this way can he avoid the perception of observation haki. Akiji heard this and nodded. Only space movement can avoid the perception of observation haki. Apart from that, there are no other tricks known at present. Picking up the chain and the sea-stone handcuffs on the ground again, Akiji found Fire Fist Ace again and looked at the decadent Ace. His eyes flashed with indifference. "Since you are so insensible, I can only put the chain on you again." After that, Akiji skillfully tied Fire Fist Ace and locked him up again like a dumpling, and his hands were once again put on the sea-stone handcuffs. He hoped that this kid would be sensible. Who would have thought that he would not change his nature? The road was his own choice, and he had to pay the price for it. Fire Fist Ace looked at the chains all over his body, and his face was ashen, especially the sea-stone handcuffs on his hands, which were as terrifying as a secret black hole in the universe, swallowing all his strength. Not to mention using the power of the devil fruit again, the strength of his whole body seemed to be swallowed up and annihilated, revealing the powerlessness deep into his bone marrow. "Let's go. You two send Fire Fist to impel down." "I can't leave, so I won't accompany you." Stretching out, Dustless had an expression of, "I'm busy and have no time." Akiji and Kizaru looked at each other and could see the envy in each other's eyes. Dustless is the first Marine Admiral in history. Almost any task is done casually, and whether to do it or not depends on his mood. On the shore of Mariewa Port, Dustless sent Akiji and Kizaru here. Fire Fist Ace, whose body was bound by all kinds of iron chains, followed closely behind. His expression was dispirited and powerless, and his eyes were blank. He was full of uncertainty about the future. The blood flowing in his body had been sucked out, and he was as thin as a matchstick, leaving only skin and bones. However, people in their 20s were more like candles in the wind. Their entire bodies were filled with indescribable dispiritedness and listlessness. They had lost the motivation to live on, and they were no different from zombies. To the current Fire Fist Ace, living was more painful and terrifying than death. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. I would have taken a step forward and taken back my words. Dustless let out a long sigh. He stared into Ace's eyes and could clearly see regret. But what could he do? You have to pay the price for everything you do. There is no path of regret. When will Sengoku execute Fire Fist? Dustless Akiji and Kizaru, who were chatting with Akiji and Kizaru, interrupted and asked. This, Akiji's eyes flashed with hesitation, and then he recalled the current situation of the Marine headquarters. He couldn't help but shake his head. At least, they can't execute Fire Fist Ace now. Everything is not ready yet, and it will take a lot of time to perfect the defense of the Marine headquarters. The other party is one of the Yonko, 4 emperors, Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world. Arrogance will only lead to self-destruction. Akiji's face was dignified. And Whitebeard has a lot of wings, and there must be a lot of pirates helping him in the new world. The place of execution is the location of the Marine headquarters, Marin. The underground defense mechanisms will be replaced during this period, and the residents of Marin will be evacuated. Kizaru took a puff of smoke, and his eyes were shining. This time the fleet admiral is going all out, and he intends to completely annihilate the Whitebeard pirates. Sengoku will definitely not let go of a dying tiger. It has been his dream for many years to annihilate the Whitebeard pirates. Dustless heard this and nodded without a trace. Judging from the current situation, it is indeed not suitable to execute Ace. Marine's preparation has not been fully done. Now Marines from all over the world have not been summoned, and the Shichibukai are also on their own. Speaking of which, Blackbeard's whereabouts have been very strange recently. Akiji changed the thread of discussion and suddenly went straight down, with a little fear vaguely. Sengoku ordered Akiji to secretly observe Blackbeard's every move, and no sign of him could escape Akiji's eyes. Impel down. Dustless was stunned when he heard the words, and then he asked tentatively. Looking at Dustless in surprise, Akiji gently nodded and said, he is indeed paying attention to impel down. His purpose is unknown. Among the Shichibukai, only his whereabouts are the most strange. Dustless smiled mysteriously and then walked leisurely into Mariewa. Blackbeard. His strength is rising now, and his courage is also getting bigger and bigger. It seems that he can't wait to attack impel down. Dustless walked straight ahead with a sneer on the corner of his mouth. About 10 years ago, he had tamed Shiryu of the Rain. This time, he just let him lurk in the Blackbeard pirates. Chapter 778. The ultimate purpose of Blackbeard Titch joining the 7 warlords of the sea is to participate in the War of the Best and find the right opportunity to seize Whitebeard's Tremor fruit ability. There is also an unknown purpose, to win over the fugitives in the deepest part of Impel Down as partners. There is no doubt that the prisoners in Impel Down are the strongest, and most of them are extremely hostile to the Marine. They are trustworthy, and it is understandable that Titch is envious of the prisoners in Impel Down. Troubled times. I thought I could be as idle as an admiral, but I didn't expect him to be even busier. Damn God, it's really unfair. Royce South must be God's illegitimate child. Staring at the gradually disappearing back of Dustless, Akiji complained discontentedly. His personality was lazy to begin with. Recently, he was so busy that he was swamped with work. Compared to Wu Qin, this kind of leisurely general, it was not an ordinary kind of hardship. It is very likely that all the good things in the world fall on him. Kizaru threw away the cigarette in his hand and nodded. The two had a chat, and immediately the battleship drew a huge ripple on the surface of the water and began its journey to Impel Down. There are a large number of marine battleships around, and some of them are powerful vice admirals. Fire Fist Ace is not an ordinary person. It will take a few days on the way, and the possibility of encountering an ambush by the Whitebeard pirates is very high. After sending Fire Fist Ace away, Dustless returned to his villa. Before his but was warm, the den mushy that Dustless and Caesar often contact rang. This guy is never looking for me for a good thing. Dustless took the den mushy. Caesar looking for him has always been a bad thing. There is a problem with the construction process of Pluton. Before Dustless could ask, Caesar's anxious voice sounded, and his tone was mixed with resentment. There is a huge contrast between the design before and after, and various data is not right, and a lot of information is missing. Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly, and his eyes flashed with doubt. The design originates from Doflamingo. If there's anything you don't understand, ask him. Dustless couldn't help but want to slap himself. Doflamingo definitely couldn't understand the design of the Pluto King. Otherwise, he could have built it himself. Doflamingo. He doesn't know shit. At the mention of Doflamingo, Caesar's tone was full of disdain and disdain. He roared angrily, "I asked him, but that kid obviously evaded the question. He actually dared to say that my level is not high enough and that I can't understand the intricacies of the Netherworld King. That bastard, he." For an hour, Caesar was cursing Doflamingo. Because of Dustless' protection, he was not afraid of Doflamingo, so he was merciless with his words. A poisonous mouth scolding was particularly refreshing. Even Wu Qin was stupefied when he heard it. "Enough, tell me what the real reason is," Wu Qin said impatiently. His voice was extremely majestic and could not be provoked. Caesar's cold sweat was falling uncontrollably like raindrops on the other side of the Den Mushi. The squirming corners of his mouth stopped, and the mouth that was about to curse Doflamingo stopped. After many years, Caesar also figured out Dustless's character. If someone recklessly angered him, their end would definitely be miserable. He can be abandoned by anyone, but he can't be abandoned by Dustless. This specific situation, hesitation flashed through Caesar's mind, and he immediately remembered the data that was getting more and more strange recently. Caesar said in a deep voice, "Doflamingo's Pluto design blueprint, to a certain extent, is more like half of it. It's only a part of the data." Caesar's face was pale as he told the truth. At the end of his words, a gloomy blue vein appeared on his forehead. As a scientist, Caesar advocates the pursuit of truth, and the most taboo is to be deceived by others. That kid must have done it on purpose, he must know the truth, Caesar said fiercely. Dustless was silent for a long time. He didn't care about the truth, he was more concerned about the final result. He calmly asked, "If the other part of the design is found, when can it be completed?" "At most 2 or 3 years. The key is that there is no perfect design." Caesar sighed helplessly. "You don't have to worry about this, just quietly build the ship for me. Maybe in the next 2 or 3 years, the Pluto King will come in handy." With a cold look on his face, Dustless hung up the Den Mushi. He gently closed his eyes. At first, he also felt that there was a problem with the Pluto design blueprint. After all, this kind of top-secret design blueprint couldn't be casually revealed to the world. It also didn't make sense for it to appear in Doflamingo's hands. Although he finally gave the design blueprint to Dustless and became Dustless's subordinate, Doflamingo's ambition had never changed. A person abandoned by the celestial dragons has guts. "I'll kill him after I squeeze out all his value," Dustless murmured after thinking for a while. Doflamingo is now a loyal dog, and his efficiency is surprisingly high. It's a pity to kill him, but it's not too late to kill him when he has no more value. Since that Pluto King's design is only a part of the data, then the remaining part should be in the hands of Frankie. Thinking of the Pluto King's design hidden in Frankie's body, Dustless's mouth curved into a cold smile. He picked up the other Den Mushi and began to communicate with Robin. The pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first. According to Robin's ability, it would be a piece of cake for him to snatch the design from the hands of those hotheads. Chapter 779. It's not that Dustless underestimated the IQ of the Straw Hat Pirates. Some of their behaviors are really not complimentary. Even if they can sometimes make the impossible possible, Dustless still thinks that they are stupid. As Akiji said, being aggressive is a good thing and worthy of praise, but simple hot-bloodedness can never make up for the huge gap between strength. If it wasn't for Dushless, the Straw Hat Pirates might have died a long time ago. Therefore, it wasn't difficult for Robin to take back Pluton's blueprint from Frankie. Hancock handed Robin's Den Mushi to Dushless and immediately stood beside him respectfully. It only took a few minutes for Dushless to tell Robin the original story and told her to be careful with the CP9. Robin's strength is much stronger than the original story, this is an undeniable fact, but there are countless examples of underestimating the enemy. Master, that Doflamingo is too annoying, we should send someone to kill him. After hanging up the Den Mushi, Hancock complained. Hearing the conversation between Dushless and the Den Mushi, she couldn't wait to grow wings and step on Doflamingo. In the beginning, she took in Doflamingo because of the design of Pluto, but now it was only half of it. Hancock suddenly felt that Doflamingo was very annoying. Using despicable to describe Doflamingo is an insult to the word shameless. Dustless saw this and just smiled and shook his head slowly, denying Hancock's idea. He smiled softly and said, "In my original hometown, there is a saying that haste makes waste. Killing him is also a matter of the future, there are still some things that need him to do. But after following me for so many years, Doflamingo seems to be a lot more confident." After more than 10 years of life, the strength of the Doflamingo pirates has rapidly improved in all aspects. The strength of the crew, including the power of his pirates, and the entire dark world is like thunder to Doflamingo. Now it seems that Doflamingo is a bit arrogant. Perhaps today's glory made him forget the gloomy past. Without Dushless, he would still be a stray dog. As the saying goes, a Daoist should never forget his roots, or else, he would be asking for trouble. However, there were very few people who could follow this saying. Especially in this world where pirates ran rampant and human ethics were distorted, being ungrateful was a trend. Taking a sip of tea comfortably, Wu Chen leaned on the sofa lazily. His eyes narrowed into a slit. His smiling eyes could see through everything. His eyes were focused on Hancock and didn't move. A panoramic view of the peerless body that was concave and curvaceous. The gaze that was full of invasiveness ignored the existence of the clothes. The dustless eye sockets reflected the delicate body that was like white jade. Dustless thought of the empty house. He reached out and pulled Hancock over. As for that woman, speaking of this, Lucci's calm face loosened, and his expression became a little gloomy. An insect had inexplicably become an existence that surpassed them. It would be strange if he didn't feel depressed. Not only that, but because of Nico and Robin's existence, their movements were restricted. Don't worry about that woman for the time being. The hesitation on his face turned into determination. Lucci's first choice for the mission was Pluton's blueprint. Although Akiji had ordered them to find a chance to arrest Nico Robin, that was only if there was a chance. Oh. I didn't expect that one day the mission would be terminated because of that woman. Kaku said loudly, full of resentment. A group of CP9 members, including Lucci, looked at him strangely. Kaku's tone of speech clearly showed the meaning of relief. It was more of a fear. The last time they met in secret, Akiji's face had obvious scars, and he said that the instigator was Nico Robin. Although there was suspicion of a sneak attack, not everyone can injure an admiral. At least, the CP9 can't do it. Only people who control armament hockey can attack a Logia user. However, who has the Pluto King's design? We have no clue at all. Caliphus sighed helplessly, her tone was full of disappointment. After several years of lurking, they still haven't figured out who has Pluton's blueprint. Observe Nico Robin secretly. He is the only person in the world who can interpret the poneglyph. Maybe he has some clues. As for the person who spies on her, Lucci looked at Blueno, his meaning was self-evident. He is a door fruit user. His ability is strange, no different from space travel. The task of investigation is always given to him. No problem. Blueno promised. After several orders were issued in succession, the small meeting of the CP9 ended. Everyone seemed to have never appeared, and the dark environment was quiet again. Ah. It's easy to deal with rookies who don't know hockey. After a few seconds of silence, a mocking voice spread out. White Zetsu's doppelganger broke out of the ground and looked at the people who had disappeared. He did not hide the sarcasm on his face. It is because you are rookies that it is easy to use you. White Zetsu is always careful when dealing with those who know hockey. His Kanban Shoku, observation, perception is extremely powerful. Once his existence is captured, he can't escape death. Chapter 781. Baizetsu had once risked his life to spy on the 5 elder stars. In the end, he was discovered by the 5 elder stars. If it wasn't for Wu Chen's extensive and profound training techniques, which gave Baizetsu a powerful escape ability, he might have been killed more than 10 years ago. It's time to find Nico Robin. Remembering Dustless's instructions, White Zetsu's body once again dived into the ground. The stinky warehouse once again returned to its deathly silence. The only thing that remained was the incessant screeching of the rats, which filled the depressing abandoned warehouse with an oppressive atmosphere. Time flew by, and 3 days passed in a blink of an eye. Capable people do more work. Blueno, who was lurking in the dark, stared at several figures in front of him and sighed. It was the Straw Hat Pirates, and of course, his eyes were focused on Nico Robin. Seeing the Straw Hats gathered together, Blueno's eyes flashed with deep disappointment. Just as he was about to retreat, Robin unexpectedly walked away alone. Blueno frowned tightly, and a flash of doubt flashed through his eyes. He remembered Lucci's instructions and followed her. Strange. She's a newcomer, what is she doing in this place? About half an hour later, Blueno followed Robin and came to a strange open place. It was deserted, and it was a plain area. There was no place to hide. Blueno could only use his door fruit's ability to open a big hole in the air and carefully observe Robin's every move. He was inexplicably happy. Robin came to such a strange place. Obviously, she was meeting with a mysterious person. Caw caw caw, the ground throbbed, and White Zetsu broke out of the ground and appeared beside Robin. Seeing this scene, Blueno suddenly smiled. He thought that it would be another difficult lurking, but he didn't expect the opportunity to come so quickly. He opened his ears and listened to the conversation between the two. Soon, a guy named Frankie entered his ears. The dark depths of the prison were like hell on earth, and there was only despair here. Under the reflection of the dirty light, a shadow could be seen on the ground. This person had delicate features and was about 18 or 19 years old. His deep black eyes were wrinkled and bright, and his hair was messy like grass. Shilyu, long time no see. You're still the same. Dustless's lips curled into a faint smile as he looked down at the bound figure in the darkness. It was as if he was meeting an old acquaintance. Clang clang clang, the rumbling sound of the iron chains rolling rang out. The big man who was bound by the iron chains opened his eyes, revealing a biting cold gaze. He had a cigar in his mouth, and his eyes flashed with a strange light. His appearance is actually the same as it was more than 10 years ago. What a monster. Shilyu of the Rain's pupils dilated. He tried his best to conceal his shocked tone as he said in disbelief. Soon after, his expression turned ice cold. His tone was filled with hostility and killing intent as he sneered, "Watch your tone. I'm not familiar with you. I can go back on my word at any time." Dustless smiled when he heard this, treating Shilyu of the Rain's words as wind that went in one ear and out the other. The distance between Mariehua and Impel Down is not far, especially the speed of the ship is extremely slow, compared with the speed of Dustless's flight, so Akiji and Kazara wasted time on the road. Blackbeard will soon pull you in. You are responsible for reporting his every move to me. His eyes were like torches staring at Shilyu of the Rain leaning against the corner of the wall, and his serious tone was irresistible. Hearing the absolute oppression in Dustless's tone and the unquestionable tone, Shilyu of the Rain's expression became colder, and his face exuded a piercing frost. What if I say no? Looking into Dustless's eyes, Shilyu of the Rain refused to back down. No. Those who dare to refuse my conditions, those who can live are also useful people. If you refuse me, you will be different from those who are alive, and you will die. Dustless's mouth exhaled cold air, and his killing intent was awe-inspiring. Immediately, his body became strangely transparent. Ignoring the existence of the iron bars of the prison, he walked leisurely close to Shilyu of the Rain, looking down at him with a ferocious look. This is not a threat, but an order. If you disobey me, you will die. His body erupted with a sharply oppressive aura, and the whole person was not angry, and his eyes did not have human emotions, as calm as looking at insects. I have no problem joining the Blackbeard pirates, but I have conditions. After thinking about it, Shilyu of the Rain chose to compromise, and it was better to go out than to stay in this ghost place. Conditions. As if he had heard the funniest joke in the world, Dustless's face was sneering. You can make conditions, but I will never agree. People who can talk to me about conditions are at least Yonko, for emperors, or admiral level, and the other party is also Shichibukai. Looking down at Shilyu of the Rain, Dustless's tone became more and more indifferent. Now you are just a prisoner. You should be grateful to let you go out. You want to talk about conditions. Daydreaming. Shilyu of the Rain's face changed greatly when he heard the words, and his eyes flashed with blood. He stared at Dustless with his eyes, and he wanted to tear him apart. The dense iron chains behind him were the chains that restrained him. He could only look at Dustless, who was close at hand, and he was particularly weak and fragile. His eyes solidified, and suddenly he found that Dustless was gone. Game over. Light speed kick. The light flickered behind him, enough to destroy the mountain. Shilyu of the Rain's body turned into a flash of light, and immediately the void splashed with a huge fire, and the ground was completely flattened. Shilyu, who was burnt, became a candle in the wind. Chapter 785. Staring blankly at the scorched Shilyu of the Rain, Dustless gently moved his limbs, and there was a crackling sound of bones. His pupils were like thousands of years of ice, without the slightest human emotion, only indifference and aloofness isolated from the world. Shilyu of the Rain's strength may be a nightmarish existence for others, but if he wants to rely on it to shake Dustless, he is setting himself on fire. Don't think it's over. In the world of illusion, the damage will also be transferred to the real body. Glancing at Shilyu of the Rain, who was pretending to be dead, Dustless disdainfully mocked. Looking up, he saw Shilyu of the Rain's body emitting hot steam, burned beyond recognition, exuding a pungent smell of meat, and the skin all over his body was burned in large areas, and the ending was unbearable to look directly at. Some people are like this. They have to court their own death. Originally, as long as he agreed to the conditions, Dustless could let him live in the future, but who would have thought that Shilyu of the Rain would do the opposite, and the end result was to ask for trouble. The road was his own choice, and no one forced Shilyu of the Rain. This is the gap between realms. Sure enough, pure passion can't make up for it. Shilyu of the Rain raised his head with difficulty and looked up at Wu Chen's indifferent face. His eyes were always expressionless. Shilyu of the Rain's tone carried endless desolation and powerlessness. Some powerful enemies, as long as they work hard, with a sincere heart, it is only a matter of time before they catch up with him. However, some enemies, like Dustless of the super monster type, no matter how hard they try, they can't catch up with him in the end. Just like what Wu Qin had said before, while you were improving, others were no exception. Even, the distance between them is not getting closer, but getting farther and farther. He can only watch silently. Still want to continue to struggle. Only by drifting with the tide can you survive. Challenging the wheel of fate is just asking for humiliation, just like you are now. Not only do you not get any return, but also a miserable scene of a stray dog. Looking at the embarrassed Shilyu of the Rain, Dustless said straightforwardly. Shilyu of the Rain's expression flashed a hint of struggle. He was Dustless's lackey. His arrogant heart could not accept it. He was also a famous swordsman. He could not swallow his anger if he was tamed without saying a word. After annihilating the Blackbeard pirates, I will set you free. Of course. If you're discovered by Blackbeard in advance and killed by him, you can only blame yourself for not being capable enough. Dustless shrugged. It had nothing to do with him. Strong people knew how to survive. On the other hand, if they couldn't survive, they could only be eliminated by history and swept into the garbage dump of the river of time. I promise you. Shilyu of the Rain's eyes changed rapidly, and he finally chose to compromise. Brave Surge's final fate was to be smashed to pieces. Are you really willing to let me go? Shilyu of the Rain doubted this. Turning his head and glancing at Shilyu of the Rain, Dustless nodded undeniably. He really didn't intend to embarrass this kid. After completing the task, he could choose to go to the ends of the earth. Using you is temporary. Even if you agree to be my subordinate, I won't take you in. His eyes were clear as water, and Dustless's tone was involuntarily convincing. Forget it. With a snort, Shilyu of the Rain was full of resentment and anger. Now he was still a prisoner. If he wanted to vent, at least he had to get out of this cage. Dustless was not the object of his complaints. How long will it take for me to get out? I have lived in this damn place for more than 10 years. If I stay for one more second, my body will vomit uncontrollably. Shilyu of the Rain said with a disgusted face. In Impel Down, since he lost to Magellan, the only thing that has not changed for more than 10 years is this broken cell that can't be broken again. This time, it has been more than 10 years. It may take a while. When the Warring States executes Whitebeard, Blackbeard should invade Impel Down during the short gap between the two forces. Now Blackbeard will not dare to attack Impel Down. Impel Down is full of experts, and the high-level battle power of the Marine headquarters will support at any time. At least wait until all the high-end battle power is restrained. Blackbeard will choose to wait for the opportunity to start. He is the kind of person who believes in being careful. How long will it take? Shilyu of the Rain's tone was low and full of dissatisfaction. You can let me out now. Don't waste precious time. It's no different from playing house. Hearing this, Wu Qin glanced at him and then explained softly, those who can't keep their cool are the little demons. You've been in prison for more than 10 years. 1 or 2 months won't matter much. How can you understand my feelings? Thinking of the experience in recent years, Shilyu of the Rain's forehead showed the blue veins, and the cold murderous aura instantly froze the moisture in the atmosphere. The more powerful a prisoner was, the more they would be exploited. A tiger that fell from the sky would be bullied by dogs. This was what it meant. After being imprisoned for so many years, any random cat or dog would shout at Shilyu of the Rain. Quietly looking at Shilyu of the Rain's expression, Dustless can also sigh. The prisoners in Impel Down have been cruelly exploited, and their hatred for the Marine and the government is even deeper. Once this group of tigers breaks out of the cage, they will instinctively attack the Marine without the guidance of others, because the two sides have left an indelible hatred. Chapter 787. This group of unknown mysterious people were all standing strangely on the branches. What was even more inconceivable was that these branches were clearly only as tough as willow branches, yet they were able to step on them and remain unscathed. It was obvious that their skills were extraordinary, and they were even whispering to each other. Looking closely, it was the members of the CP9. Blueno. Are you sure that the design of Pluton is in Frankie's hands? Califa, the only female member of the CP9, frowned as she thought of Frankie, a man with a special hobby, and her skin was numb. Not only Califa, but the other members also looked at Blueno strangely. Frankie was an idiot, he didn't look like a person worth trusting. I heard it with my own ears. Bruno patted his chest and swore solemnly. Hearing this, the group of CP9 members frowned. They have been hiding for several years. If the design of Pluton really exists, then the ending will be perfect. If it's just a rumor, then their identity will be exposed. This meant that 7 years of lying low was about to go down the drain. Everything he had done in the past would vanish into thin air. The gains would not make up for the losses. One wrong step and everything would be over. Do you want to ask him? Seeing that the team was in a dilemma, Blueno suggested tentatively. Him. The group of CP9 members were stunned and immediately looked at Blueno. Lucci was the one in charge of the team, but he obviously wasn't talking about Lucci but someone else. I'm talking about Spandam. After all, he is our boss. You should know that he dash. Blueno's voice suddenly stopped, and his companions looked at him as if he was an idiot. Kaku, who was holding his arms in front of his chest, said with disdain, if we count on that idiot, let alone getting the Pluton King blueprint, we might not even be able to survive. Kaku's face was full of disdain. He held a contemptuous attitude towards this waste of a superior. Every time he saw his ugly and disgusting face, he would feel nauseous. After thinking about it, everyone looked at Lucci, who was silent. He was the captain of the team, so the final decision was up to him. I've decided to give it a try. Seeing all the members looking at him, Lucci took a deep breath and looked at Frankie's house in the distance. His eyes shot out a bloody light. If we go down in fear, we won't get the design for the rest of our lives, and we seem to have been deceived by the original scene from the beginning. Lucci's eyes were shining as if he could see through everything, and the doubts of the past disappeared. Now that he looked back, everything that had happened in the past could be made sense. Don't be fooled by appearances. Lucci's face turned black as he thought of the possibility of being kept in the dark in recent years. Have you forgotten the relationship between Frankie, Iceberg, and the former shipbuilder Tom? The three of them used to have a close master-disciple relationship. They were like father and son. Iceberg, as the mayor, secretly gave Pluto's blueprint to Frankie, while Iceberg attracted the world government's attention. The CP9 members heard this and nodded. The relationship between Frankie, Iceberg, and Tom was indeed unclear. Although Iceberg and Frankie didn't seem to care about each other, they actually had a secret relationship. It's watertight. Sometimes, it's because it's too perfect that it's full of flaws. Looking at Frankie's house in front of him, Lucci's eyes became even colder. He immediately jumped down from the branch and strode forward with his head held high. Everything is ready. Let's grab Frankie for the time being and then escort him to Eni's lobby. Lucci's eyes were shining, and his tone was irresistible. Kaku, Califa, and the others looked at each other and jumped down from the branches and followed Lucci's footsteps. They grew up together as CP9 members. For Lucci's orders, they will choose to obey both public and private orders. How about the Straw Hat Pirates? They have been playing with Iceberg recently. Califa suddenly interrupted. As Iceberg's secretary, any trace of him couldn't escape Califa's eyes. Those guys are from the Marine. We are the CP9. We don't need to meddle in their business. Kaku frowned. Hearing this, Khalifa shook her head, her beautiful eyes flashing with ruthlessness. I mean, what if they meddle in other people's business? If Lucci's previous speculation is true, then it means that Frankie's relationship with Iceberg is still the same as before. In this way, Iceberg won't just watch Frankie get caught. Khalifa analyzed. If that really happens, we will annihilate the Straw Hat Pirates. Lucci clenched his fist and said decisively. He didn't have an indecisive personality. He was decisive and ruthless. At this moment, Frankie's house was a different scene. A strange group of people were having a party, laughing and singing, not realizing the approaching danger. As for Frankie himself, he was wearing underwear and was performing comically. He seemed to be immersed in his unique art. Because he was too focused, he even forgot himself. Chapter 788. The so-called Frankie's house, to some extent, was more like Frankie's personal bowl. The lights were shining and the screams were incessant. The only disgusting thing was that they were all men. No wonder he was called a pervert. Boom, boom, boom. The ground suddenly trembled, and with a loud bang, the dazzling sunlight suddenly shone in. Everyone in the house of Frankie was stunned. They were used to being domineering on the island, and very few people dared to provoke them. This sudden scene petrified the people present, and they immediately revealed a terrified expression. They looked at the blue-haired man on the stage and instinctively stepped back. This strange middle-aged man was dressed funny. He only wore boxers on his lower body. His thick legs were covered with dense hair, and he wore a funny pair of sunglasses. People couldn't help but associate him with a clown. Bastard, how dare you destroy my house's door? Who did this? Come out. Frankie, who regained his senses, roared, and the endless impact spread out. Those who were affected all felt a level 10 wind blowing over their body. They looked at Frankie with lingering fear. Their boss was angry. What are you doing? Can't you see clearly? No wonder you are a pervert. Of course, we are here to destroy your house. Undisguised mockery spread out and inevitably entered Frankie's ears. It ignited the fire in his heart. Frankie was already burning with anger, and his entire right arm was trembling as if it was going to break. There were visible cracks that could be seen with the naked eye. Era. What a good body. You can transform your body to this state with your own ability. It seems that your shipbuilding technology is far better than ours. But that's right, we are not shipbuilders. Several figures came into view from the door that had been destroyed by the chisel ship. It's you guys. Frankie restrained his anger and glared at them. You guys dare to destroy my house. But then again, you are all Iceberg's workers. How can you suddenly become so strong? Frankie looked at them cautiously. He was keenly aware that something was wrong. Frankie, raising his eyelids, Lucci stepped forward and turned into a gust of wind. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, Frankie closed his eyes out of instinct as he felt a sharp gust of wind in front of him. A second later, he felt that the wind had calmed down, so he slowly opened his eyes. So fast. Just when did it happen? Staring at Lucci in front of him, Frankie couldn't describe the shock in his heart. These usually honest shipbuilders have now turned into awakened Azura, a cold-blooded butcher. Especially Lucifer in front of him, his whole body was full of misfortune. I don't want to waste my breath. Hand over the design you've been keeping, and I'll spare your life. Lucci didn't even look at Frankie. He simply closed his eyes as if he was talking to the air, as if he didn't exist. Frankie was like an eyesore. Lucci felt dirty just by looking at him. What kind of attitude is this? Frankie's old face changed as he glared at him. Hearing this, Lucci's face wrinkled and squeezed together. His closed eyes immediately opened and narrowed into a line, emitting a dangerous and sinister light. Asking for trouble. The moment his voice fell, Lucci's body turned into an afterimage and disappeared from Frankie's eyes. Are you kidding me? How can a mere human be so fast? Frankie's face was sluggish. He instinctively wiped his eyes and said in surprise, yes, they are also shipbuilders. They must have modified their bodies before. Ignorant. A ghostly indifferent voice fell from the sky, followed by a black shadow coming down from the sky. An explosive force condensed on his feet, and Frankie was instantly hit. Boom, boom, boom. The ground couldn't withstand the terrifying force and burst open, creating a huge pit. An invisible shockwave spread out, and the strangely shaped Frankie's house collapsed like paper. The dazzling sunlight entered everyone's eyes. Everyone raised their hands to block the erosion of the light. They all looked at the shocking scene in silence. Boss has been killed. Run. People's hearts were fragile. Seeing their boss Frankie get killed so easily, these fence-sitters started to flee. Lucci's eyes were filled with a cold light as he looked at the rest of the CP9 members with a cold look. That means he wants to kill all of them. How can he be so strong? He's just a shipbuilder, Frankie said with a trembling voice. His whole body was almost scrapped. That casual kick easily injured him. I'll repeat it for the last time. Hand over the Pluto blueprint, Lucci said coldly as he looked down at Frankie. His face remained stoic. Pluton. What is that? I don't have that kind of thing. Frankie's eyes flashed with panic as he loudly argued. He shouted loudly, trying to prove his innocence. Sure enough, it's in this guy's hands. A faint smile appeared on Lucci's face as he noticed Frankie's panic. The CP9 has been lurking in Water 7 for several years just for the Pluton blueprint. Chapter 789. Lucci's eyes were like an eagle's. His sharp eyes overflowed with a threatening light. Under these eyes, nothing could hide. Frankie's biggest secret was completely exposed to Lucci's eyes. Sorry, what do you mean? I don't understand. Frankie said with a straight face. Hearing this, Lucci's frozen face loosened, revealing a rare faint smile. He withdrew his leg from Frankie's body and replaced it with a playful expression. Ha! The blood-curdling screams in the surroundings were chilling and horrifying. The sorrowful cries that sounded like they were better off dead were filled with a deep sense of despair. Looking carefully, the surrounding ground was soaked with pungent blood. It was like purgatory on earth. There were also many dismembered corpses and severed limbs. Frankie's minions were easily crushed by Lucci's CP9. They didn't even have the power to fight back. These rookies couldn't do anything at all. Stop it, you bastards! Hearing the miserable screams, Frankie's eyes turned red as he roared sharply, his tone filled with hysteria. As you wish, all of you stop. Lucci's powerful voice spread, stopping the CP9 from slaughtering Frankie's men, and immediately said, as a reward, you should also tell us the whereabouts of the Pluton design. I don't know. Frankie argued with a red face. Is that so? Hearing this, the corner of Lucci's mouth once again flashed a devilish smile. He waved his right hand with great momentum, and the miserable scream once again resounded throughout the sky. The CP9 once again began to slaughter Frankie's men. Bastard, let go of me, I'll tear you apart alive. Frankie roared angrily, his words were full of hatred. He wanted to tear Lucci and the members of the CP9 to pieces and burn their bones to ashes. You? Lucci looked at Lucci expressionlessly. Looking at his mechanical right arm, Lucci's eyes flickered with cold light. He suddenly lifted his right foot and a silver flash appeared. Renkyaku. The white light was as sharp as a blade, and no one dared to look directly at it. It could easily tear the ground apart, and it immediately kicked towards Frankie's mechanical right arm. Gotcha! His right arm was instantly obliterated and turned into a pile of scrap metal. You should be more obedient this way. Lucci retracted his right foot and looked down at the ferocious Frankie. Lucci calmly said as if he had done something insignificant and remained calm from beginning to end. Who the hell are you, bastard? Frankie suppressed the shock in his heart. Remembering the importance of Pluto, he could only choose to ignore the death of his subordinates. A lot of people are coming. Let's retreat for now. As long as we bring Frankie with us, the Pluto King's design will fall into our hands sooner or later. Kaku cautiously said. Frankie wouldn't speak for a while, and there was already a large group of people coming, so there was no need to waste time. Lucci pondered for a few seconds before nodding slightly. Frankie was clearly stalling for time. It was best to take him away. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Lucci and the others also arrived at Eni's lobby from Water 7. They thought they would be greeted by their boss, Spandam, but they didn't expect to be greeted by another nightmare. "Ah! You are finally back. I have been waiting for 4 days." Dustless had a smile on his face as he waved at Lucci and the others. As for Spandam, he was standing next to Dustless. He was obviously the boss of the CP9, but in an instant, he became Dustless's foil. The faces of the CP9 members changed. Their faces were gloomy, but they could only smile awkwardly. Their ugly faces had a bright smile. It was enough to see how forced their smiles were. In the past, Mariehua and Dustless left an indelible impression on them. Invincible strength, and an exaggerated identity that could shake the world with a stomp of his feet, everything was enough for them to look up to. "This guy is Frankie, right?" Dustless asked as he stared at the steel freak with interest. Lucci and the others' faces stiffened. They immediately looked at each other and nodded. It was impossible to hide it. They were afraid that the idiot Spandam would tell the whole story to Dustless. "You guy." When Dustless appeared, Frankie stared at him. He felt like he had seen him before. Then he remembered that Dustless was already famous in the world when he was only in his 20s. He often read about him in the newspapers. He was a mysterious general who had become a legend, Marine Admiral. Frankie was silent for a long time before he suddenly realized that Dustless hasn't changed in the past decade. His appearance has always been the same as when he was 17 or 18 years old. "You are smart." After glancing at Frankie, Dustless looked straight into his eyes and said threateningly, "If you picked it up, then hand over the Pluto blueprint. I guarantee that you won't have to worry about food and clothing in the future. Otherwise, you will be imprisoned forever." Lucci and the others' faces changed. Dustless's words were tantamount to directly saying that he wanted to take the blueprint of Pluton. Although they are under the same force, and even Dustless's status is far higher than their CP9, Lucci and the others can't accept it. Chapter 790. In a spacious and bright room, Dustless was sitting leisurely on the sofa with his legs crossed. Spandam and the CP9 members were standing on both sides of him. "Are we going to give Pluton's blueprint to him for free?" The CP9 members looked at each other and saw the helplessness and unwillingness in each other's eyes. After years of hard work, they finally got Pluton's blueprint. Now that the cooked duck is about to fly away, the CP9 members are naturally unwilling. Although Dustless's identity is above the Gorasei, 5 elder stars, they are also clearly separated from each other. The CP9 only obeys the Gorasei, 5 elder stars. "We can only count on him." Everyone looked at Spandam. After all, this idiot is the boss of the CP9, and his status is also the highest. Even if his strength is lower than normal humans, his IQ is not to be complimented. His mouth is really good, and his flattery skills are deep. Maybe he can fool Dustless. But this time, Lucci and the others are destined to be disappointed. Bastard, why are you standing there stupidly? Go and pour tea. Spandam smiled at Dustless with a flattering expression, but his expression immediately changed faster than flipping a book. He roared at Khalifa with a stern face, inwardly scolding her for not knowing the rules. In one sentence, the CP9 members' faces turned black. Sure enough, he's just an idiot, he's unreliable except for flattery. Khalifa's beautiful eyes were spitting fire as she cursed in her heart. She glared at Spandam fiercely and then went to pour tea for Dustless. What are you people doing here? I don't have the so-called Pluton's blueprint. I never understood that kind of thing. Don't accuse a good person. Frankie, who was tied with iron chains, screamed. At this moment, his right arm was scrapped, and the wound was full of damaged machinery. Developing your body didn't make your brain enough. You still don't realize what we are doing. What an idiot. Looks like the long period of development has dulled your brain. Spandam coldly stared at Frankie. Soon after, he walked in front of Frankie and looked down at him with the attitude of a victor. Stop pretending. Hand over Pluto's design. Spandam, who was wearing a strange mask, threatened while waving the scimitar in his hand. Lucci and others did not hesitate to expose their identity as undercover agents to bring him back, which means that Pluton's blueprint is on him. There's no need to threaten him. It won't work on him. Dustless narrowed his eyes into slits. His eyes shone with a wise light. Frankie looked like a rough person, but in reality, he was very careful. Threats had no effect on him. At this moment, everyone's attention was focused on Frankie. Those who were attentive would notice that Dustless's eyes were faintly changing. Something is wrong. Frankie. Did I remember it wrong? Wuchen's three-tomo Sharingan rolled around as he noticed that Frankie's body was empty and frowned. If he remembered correctly, in the original work, Frankie hid the blueprint in his body. However, with his Sharingan's perverted insight, Dustless didn't notice the existence of Pluto's blueprint hidden in his body. Dustless closed his eyes and recalled what happened in the past few days. His eyes shone with a wise light. He already had a vague idea of what was going on. This matter was obviously unusual. Since it's not in Frankie's body. I'm afraid it's probably in their bodies. The corner of his eyes looked at Lucci and the others. In the past few days, the only people who came in contact with Frankie were Spandam and CP9. There was no doubt that it was taken by one of them. This is interesting. Dustless had a strange smile on his face as he muttered to himself. Although it was just an unfounded guess, the only people who came in contact with Frankie in the past few days were them. Pluto's blueprint must be related to these people. This drama is not bad. I can barely watch it. Ignoring the existence of Spandam, Dustless locked his eyes on Lucci. Although no one knew what happened in Water 7, and the CP9 killed almost everyone on the scene, White Zetsu, who was spying in the dark, recorded the details of the battle. Rob Lucci killed Frankie alone and destroyed half of his arm. This guy is the biggest suspect. Maybe Pluto's blueprint was already in Lucci's hands, but he happened to meet Dustless and chose not to talk about it. At the same time, Khalifa walked over elegantly with a fragrant hot tea. The little girl's tea is good. As the strongest person in Eni's lobby, he was naturally the first one to enjoy it, followed by Spandam, Lucci, and the others. The Marine attaches great importance to the division of ranks, and so does Eni's lobby. Give me a cup too. Frankie said with a dry mouth. He had been tortured for the past few days, and his stomach started to growl and protest before he even had a chance to eat anything. Oh, yes, I don't want tea. It's better to have a cup of cola. Of course, not a mini one like yours. If possible, I want a big deluxe version. Hearing this, everyone's face turned gloomy. Even Dustless's calm mind couldn't help but tremble slightly. This bastard doesn't have any awareness of being a captive. Chapter 791. At the same time, on the other side, above the sea, a sharp roar pierced through the void, and an endless winding train galloped across the sea. The destination was the looming Eni's lobby hidden in the clouds in front of them. We're finally here, guys, cheer up. Luffy stood on the front of the train, looking at the impel down in the distance. His impassioned tone was full of confidence. Today, Luffy is no longer the immature boy he used to be. After several consecutive defeats, first Dustless, then Aokiji, although his hot-blooded nature hasn't weakened, he is much more mature than before. That's Eni's lobby. Unbelievable. Usopp's face was sluggish. The distant Eni's lobby was hidden in the clouds as if it was floating in the sky, and the visual conflict was particularly shocking. Isn't it a bit reckless for us to accept Iceberg's mission in a hurry? After all, we have only known each other for a few days. Usopp, who recovered, said with dissatisfaction. Ordinary enemies are nothing, but this time is different from the past. It's not a marine or a pirate, it's the world government's secret spy organization, CP9. Their strength is stronger than any enemy they have seen before. Shut up, Usopp. Zoro's eyes were filled with a ferocious light that belonged to a beast, an array of sword intent that wanted to cut off the sea spread out. The sword at his waist made a burst of clear sound, and he was quite excited. We are pirates, and it's common for us to fight against the world government. The Straw Hats nodded. They will be invincible in the future, so it's good to test the enemy now. Iceberg-san treated us sincerely. He also promised to help us build ships for free, so it's only right to help him save Frankie. Sanji said after smoking. Seeing this, Usopp tactfully shut his mouth. The harsh sound of the train's whistle was getting closer and closer, and finally it inevitably reached Dustless and the others' ears. That should be the water train. Looking as far as the eye could see, through the layers of clouds, the galloping train in the distance could be seen in his eyes. Due to the excellent dynamic capture ability, he could even clearly see Luffy and the others. You can't wait to die. I'll send all of you to hell this time. Spandam gritted his teeth as if his dignity had been trampled and insulted. He looked ferocious as if he wanted to cut the Straw Hat pirates into pieces. Lucci, Kaku, Califa. Spandam leisurely turned around and glanced at the three of them. He then pointed at the devil fruits on the table. Hurry up and eat those devil fruits. They can increase your strength. Lucci and others frowned. Although they were quite unhappy with the tone of this order, they still walked to the table. After eating the devil fruit, immediately attack the Straw Hat pirates. They are pirates with a bounty of more than 100 million berries. They once defeated Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea. It's impossible to count on the group outside. Spandam sighed and said dejectedly. He has absolute authority in Eni's lobby, but the real powerhouses are only the few in front of him. As for me, I will personally escort him to the Marine headquarters through the Gate of Justice. There are countless ways to make this idiot speak. Spandam's eyes flashed with cruelty as he sneered. A group of CP9 members looked at Spandam speechlessly. This guy is too shameless. He obviously wanted to take advantage of the situation and run to the Marine headquarters to take the lead, but he still said such righteous words. Shameless. Hearing this, Dustless looked at him deeply and then lay down on the sofa to rest. Boom. Boom. Boom, the chaotic and depressing shelling resounded through the sky. Eni's lobby suddenly splashed a secret fire, and the ground trembled slightly. The direction of the shelling was the train on the sea. Wouch! The powerful shelling suddenly exploded where Dushless and the others were. Boom! The harsh roar was particularly oppressive. Lucci, Dushless, and others were fine. Only Spandam was so scared that his legs were weak. If it weren't for the presence of Dushless, he would have run away. Hurry up and attack the Straw Hat Pirates, I will send Frankie to the Gate of Justice first. Spandam said with a pale face and immediately dragged Frankie out. The doubt in Wu Chen's eyes turned into understanding. Up to this point, he had already guessed the whereabouts of Pluto's design blueprint. It was exactly as he thought. It was among these people, but someone played a little trick to get it in advance. Hurry up! In the dark tunnel, there was an angry shout. There was no doubt that only Frankie and Spandam were connected to the Gate of Justice. Don't try to stall for time. Be careful or I'll send people to kill everyone in Water 7. That's your hometown. You don't want your hometown to sink. Since that's the case, you better be sensible. Spandam warned coldly, his tone was full of endless violence. Spandam. The child's play is over. Call out what I want. Chapter 792. With the help of the dim light, they could clearly see that there were more shadows on the ground. They were confronting Frankie and Spandam. The shadow stood in the darkness like a javelin, showing no fear at all. Mr. Admiral, Spandam was startled, and the panic in his eyes disappeared in a flash. He immediately smiled and said, "Could it be that you want to personally escort Frankie?" "Thank you." Then he pushed Frankie to Dustless's side. Wu Chen looked at Spandam meaningfully. After a moment of silence, he retracted his gaze. "You are really despicable. The design of Pluto is already in your hands. You have guts. You even dare to lie to me." Spandam's face stiffened, then he said with a blank face, "Frankie is a stubborn guy, he didn't say anything about Pluton's blueprint. If you don't believe me, you can ask him." Spandam pointed at Frankie with a flattering smile. His expression was even more affectionate than when he saw his own father. Frankie was silent, he just quietly looked at the ground. His face was no longer as violent as before. It seemed that the cold ground was more attractive than Dustless and Spandam. "You bastard!" "Humph!" Spandam was about to teach Frankie a lesson. Frankie was now tied up in chains, he was like a fish on the chopping board. Spandam naturally wasn't afraid. "Your acting is really crude and inferior, Spandam." Wu Chen suddenly spoke out to stop his action. "You must be mistaken." Spandam argued, "Lucci is a cold-blooded person, he can't get the answer. He is the ultimate killing machine trained by the government." "You still don't want to admit it." Dustless just glanced at Spandam and said, "You are wrong. Lucci is the ultimate killing machine, he can't get the information about Pluton's blueprint. Lucci's behavior is about bloody killing. That is, justice in the dark. He can't do this kind of torture. Not only him, but the entire CP9 can't do it. The only person who can do it is you." Dustless said. Spandam didn't understand, he asked blankly, "They can't do it, only I can do it?" "Impossible, I am just an ordinary person." "Ordinary person?" Dustless said with a sneer, "An ordinary person can't be the highest officer of the CP9. The reason why I said you can get Pluton's blueprint is because you are more despicable than them." In the end, Dustless's voice rose several decibels. As Spandam said, he was just an ordinary person, but in the end, he became the highest officer of the CP9. He was more despicable than others, he knew how to survive. Therefore, Spandam more suitable to deal with Frankie's stubbornness. He also knew how to be flexible, unlike Lucci, who only knew how to kill. "Akiji seemed to have given you something." A light voice made Spandam's face change, cold sweat dripped from his forehead uncontrollably. This is the Golden Den Den Mushi, it's necessary to launch the Demon Slayer order. Dustless said as he took out the Golden Den Den Mushi. Why do you have such a thing?